My name's Chris Dinkel. I'm the marketing coordinator at High Plains Mental Health Center, also an adjunct professor of history at Fort Hays State University. My parents are Steve and Kathy Dinkel. Hopefully that narrows it down with the picture. I know I've heard from a couple other Chris Dinkels to say, please tell people who you are, because we're getting all kinds of fan mail and not. Yeah, so that's who I am. I'm born and raised in Hays, went away for college, came back and did a master's degree in history here at Fort Hays, and have worked in sales and marketing ever since. Been at High Plains Mental Health Center about 3.5 years now. I've been married for about 3 years. My wife and I just had a son in February. He was 8 months old, day before yesterday, and she's from Albania, so that's where we just got back from vacation. Met on a mission trip. I really think the city of Hays is spending its money well. I think we're one of the most well-managed cities that I've seen. The budget is lean, things are running well. I was very impressed with this past year, the challenge to city department heads to trim their budgets so they could give their employees a raise. I mean, that's a huge thing. It's very difficult for people working for municipalities or counties or nonprofits right now. Everyone's really struggling, and so to be able to give your employees a raise by making things more efficient, that's fantastic. So I think the city does really well on that. There's some things that I'd like to see recognized a little bit more as problems. I think we need to get a little bit more aggressive on a few things like affordable housing for one. I think the city needs to get a little bit more aggressive in recognizing what a problem that actually is and coming up with creative ways to go after it. I think the city's very well managed, but at times it lacks vision. You know, we have a comprehensive plan, and there are things moving forward that are good. I think things like Downtown Hays Development Corporation have been extremely successful. Downtown Hays is great. The events they put on are fantastic. It's really going well. But I think we need to focus on housing. I think efforts like the R9 Ranch make a lot of sense. You know, water is not a crisis yet, but we need to have the groundwork in place so that if we do start to get into a crisis situation, we have somewhere to turn. My big reason for running for City Commission was to provide some of that vision. Like I said, I really think the city's well managed, but I think we need to get outside the box a little bit. We're dealing with the same things. And I mean, honestly, the bulk of the budget for a city is going to be roads and sewer and water and all the boring things that nobody cares about. You know, it was really funny to watch all of the debates, both online and at the City Commission about the $58,000 to the Downtown Hays Development Corporation, all that debate in a $30 million budget, that this $50,000 is what they're arguing about. Because, you know, most of it's pretty standard. Make sure our streets are clean, make sure there's not too much snow on them, you know, all those types of things. I think the city does that really well. I just feel that we need to start thinking outside the box on some of those issues. Economic development is another one of them that, you know, there's been lots of talk about how to recruit retailers and how to recruit new businesses. I think we're thinking about it backwards. We have recruited businesses in the past and they've failed because we don't have the population. And you look at organizations like NEW that only ever recruited up to half capacity and eventually pulled out. That was an excellent employer. It employed a lot of people, could have employed a lot more. It paid well, good benefits, upward mobility. You know, I had several friends that were managers at NEW, and it was excellent. But if we don't have the people to fill the seats, those organizations won't come out here. A lot of people that I know, business owners, managers at local stores, have a very hard time recruiting help and getting good help. And part of that is because our population in Western Kansas is shrinking. You know, Hays has not seen it, but I think that's largely because the people in the surrounding areas are retiring to Hays. So we're being propped up by people who are coming from Quinter and Waukene and Russell and Plainville and all of these surrounding areas to be closer to the medical center or to be closer to family. And we need to recognize that we are, even if that population number is staying steady, we're losing people, we're losing workers, we're losing the producers in this area. And if we don't figure out a way to keep people and compete on that level, we're going to run out of options. The biggest one is partnering with developers to build affordable housing. And I'm not talking about low-income housing type of things. I'm talking about houses to purchase between $125,000 and $175,000. You know, one of the difficulties in Hayes is that as we have young professionals here, and this isn't even recruiting people to Hayes, it's keeping people that we have. You know, people at my age are looking to buy a house, but even if both spouses work, it's very difficult to find a house. You know, the housing study that just came out that the commission was discussing a few weeks ago showed that, by the state numbers and us, the median income in Hayes is $10,000 lower than what the state median is, and our housing price is $25,000 higher than the median in the state. That's brutal. So if you're looking at the prospect as a young career person, am I going to stay in Hayes and work for $10,000 less and maybe get a house? Or do I move to Kansas City, Wichita, Topeka, Lawrence, any of these other cities where I have the potential to make much more money and housing prices are comparable or lower? You know, Kansas City, my brother works in Kansas City, and their median income is $20,000 higher than Hayes's, and their housing market's right on par. I think it was $2,000 or $3,000 higher. So when you look at that comparison, and when he was looking at houses there, he was getting a lot more house for the money as well. So it's a hard sell to get people to move out here, and it's a hard sell to get people to stay out here. You know, Fort Hays State University is an excellent place to recruit talent to the region. But when the job opportunities aren't here and it's that much more expensive to live here than elsewhere, it doesn't make sense to stay. I think it's an interesting issue how polarizing this is already. I feel like we argue about things the most when we have the fewest details. We don't know what it's going to cost, or maybe we do have an estimate of what it's going to cost, but there's nothing finalized, and it's turned into this huge controversy already. My wife is from Europe. There's roundabouts everywhere. I've driven on hundreds of them. I think they're fantastic. I really like them. It's a lot easier to navigate than side streets and unmarked crossings and the type of stuff that we have up there right now. I would see it as being a potential benefit to that part of town. It would be easier to develop. It would be a lot easier for places to go in. You know, I was friends with the owner at Peter Mandy's, where Hickok's Steakhouse is now, and man, you had to pray every time you came out of that parking lot, because that traffic off those access roads is brutal, and you've got people coming from so many different directions. And especially when you're having people off I-70 who don't know how it works, you have people coming the wrong direction on some of these things. And so I think roundabouts would really help. That said, that's going to be an extremely expensive project, and it depends. We're going to have to do a lot more study on cost versus reward, whether this is actually going to be worth it. I definitely see benefits. I think roundabouts would be great. It would. I think the thing that people don't like about them is it feels like they're slower, but it actually speeds traffic up because you don't have the long stops and the long waits. Right. There's just kind of this constant creep. Figuring out ways to do business development and to do housing developments. There may be some money that we need to spend there. We're also looking at the R9 Ranch. It's going to be a major chunk of money if we need to build a pipeline. Some of those things may be more important first, especially since we just redid Vine Street. Mm-hmm. The infrastructure is going to last for a while. It's not a crisis that, we got to rip up the road anyway.
Right.
but it would help. I mean, even just thinking about getting in and out of Home Depot, Home Depot's done okay because it is the destination store back there. People will figure out how to find it, but it's really difficult for anybody else to justify developing back there because it's really hard to get to. But if there's a roundabout that has signage and it's going to open that up a little bit, it would be a lot easier to justify developing out in that corridor. I have some. I've heard a lot about the convention center, with a lot of different ideas of how to do that. I've heard some good ideas. I think that would be something that would benefit us. But again, that's going to depend a lot on how things work on the I-70 Vine corridor and all of that. I don't think it's something that the city should own, but I think the city should certainly be part of the recruitment effort and the development effort. There's a number. Housing has come up over and over. I mean, that was a priority for me to begin with, but then I've also heard it a lot. There's a lot of people that I know that are my age and younger that have moved away because of it. They're, even getting jobs. There were two couples that moved to Russell and got jobs there. They make less money, but the house costs half of what it was going to cost here. So their cost of living, their quality of life is better there than it would be here, just for the pay gap. And when I talk about competing with metropolitan areas, I'm not even talking about Russell, across Plainville, or people who drive in from Ellis. This is just a fact that I mean, that's talent lost to the city of Hayes, even just to Russell. And that's not the major metros that we're competing with. One thing I want to clarify is I've had a lot of questions as to why I've been so involved with the school bond and then didn't run for school board. My biggest reason for getting involved in the school bond issue to begin with was from the perspective of a citizen of Hayes. I'm a proponent of education. I've worked in education. I'm still an adjunct professor. I think one of the things that Hayes lacks is a really good presentation with the schools. We have a very strong school district. The students have higher than average test scores. We have very, very good outcomes coming out of USD 489, but our buildings are very old. As we have doctors, professors, young professionals coming to see Hayes and decide, schools are often cited as one of the main things when they consider a community to settle in. That's not to say that they won't look at the test scores and interview a few teachers, but honestly, when you walk into the front of one of these school buildings, we've done the tours at Lincoln and at Wilson, and I hadn't been in Lincoln since I was probably in 4th or 5th grade. And first of all, it's a lot smaller than I remember. But that building is in awful shape. And so if you're having people come in and judging your community based on these buildings, we're not scoring very well. And so beyond just being better educational space, I think that the school bond issue is a huge issue for the city at large. And that's why I've been involved in it. So that's why I'm running for city commission as opposed to school board, because I think once we get this bond passed, and I hope it passes, there are other things that we need to deal with in the city that I'd like to be involved with. I don't think it's the city's responsibility to support the school district with sales tax or any other way. However, I think it would be wise if the city, the county, the school district were cooperating better on a lot of these things. I think we're functioning as three very separate entities that we're all in the same boat.